From the beginnings of time, man has told stories. Among his favorites are of the unexplained. Arthur C. Clarke once said, "There exist two possibilities. Either we are alone in the universe, or we are not. Either is equally terrifying. Only a fool discounts as impossible that which falls outside his experience. And thus, we have tales from beyond the veil." Of all the stories of occult lore, there are none more terrifying or more romantic than those of the vampire. Count Dracula, the Transylvanian vampire, has haunted the imagination of the world for just over 120 years. But the blood-sucking creatures of which he has become the horrible chief have lurked in the legends of Europe since the 9th century. The fanged noble came out of the shadows in 1897 in the pages of the Irish author Bram Stoker's novel Dracula, and it seems that Stoker partly based his diabolical character on a real Romanian tyrant, Vlad V. For Vlad, nicknamed the Impaler, was also known as Draculae, the Romanian word for son of the devil. Vlad ruled in Wallachia, now part of Romania, from 1456 to 1462. In those 6 years, he's said to have executed 40,000 people by impaling them on long stakes. No one was immune from his brutal whim. Captives in his wars with Turkish invaders, noble hangers-on in his own court, and even priests and holy men who were usually revered. Stoker, who never visited Transylvania, but researched his novels in the British Museum, knew the vampire legends and knew that to kill an undead body, a stake had to be driven through its heart. It seems that Vlad's habit, which Stoker heard about from a Hungarian historian, pierced the author's imagination and vibrated a chord that has quivered the nerves of readers ever since. Stoker may have been further inspired by another bloody noble, the Hungarian Countess Elizabeth Bathory. She lived in Széchenyi Castle in the dark Carpathian Mountains. While her husband was away on his numerous military campaigns, the beautiful countess gathered around her a sinister band of witches, sorcerers, and alchemists, who indulged her belief in drinking and bathing in the blood of young girls would preserve her beauty. In the dead of night, the countess and her henchmen would crisscross the countryside in a black coach hunting for girls. Any they found were kidnapped and driven back to the castle. There, the girls were tortured and hung on chains while their blood was drained to fill the countess's bath. News of her reign of terror finally reached the ears of Hungarian King Matthias II. When his men searched the castle, they found scores of bodies hanging from chains in the dungeons. At her trial in 1611, the countess was convicted of murdering some 50 girls. Her accomplices were beheaded or burned at the stake, but the Countess Elizabeth Bathory herself escaped execution because of her noble birth. Instead, she was condemned to a living death, walled up in a tiny room in the Castle of Doom, and kept alive only by scraps of food pushed through a small slit. She died 4 years later, still in her tomb. There is a spine-tingling echo of the Countess's fate in Stoker's short story called Dracula's Guest. In this story, a man journeying to Castle Dracula and seeking shelter from a storm in a cemetery finds the tomb of a noblewoman with an iron stake driven into her coffin. Like many stories that have been absorbed into folklore, the vampire legend has some medically factual backing. During the late Middle Ages, interbreeding among Eastern European nobles led to various genetic disorders, including a rare disease, erythropoietic protoporphyria. The disease itself was not diagnosed until the 19th century, but from records of the time, doctors are now convinced that many of the so-called vampires were in fact victims of this disease. Since sufferers rarely lived long, Most would have been children. The disorder makes the body produce too much porphyrin, a substance basic to red blood cells. This results in redness of the skin, eyes, and teeth, a receding upper lip, and cracks into the skin that bleed when exposed to light. Doctors of the time could treat the condition only by locking the patients away during the day and by encouraging them to drink blood to replace what they lost by bleeding. But rumors of these nocturnal blood drinkers could have led to a spate of vampire stories in the region and encouraged Stoker to set the Castle Dracula in the strange Eastern European land of Transylvania. Real, fable, myth, only the undead know for sure.